it's a jungle down here in the Yucatan. Classic kind of jungle with the vines and tropical trees, monkeys, iguanas, snakes. Whew. Yeah, vámonos. Now, in the Yucatan, like any jungle at all, well, it's hot almost all year round. And like every hot place, well, any place really, water's the source of life. It's precious stuff. But here in the Yucatan, there are no rivers or lakes. So you gotta find the stuff wherever you can find it, which sometimes means going pretty deep. And here, 5 stories below the heat of that jungle, there's a whole secret world. The world of the cenotes. Now, the Yucatan is basically just a huge limestone shelf, but running through it, below the surface, is a huge network of rivers. And as water coursed through those rivers over millions of years, well, it created some incredible caves and some lagoons. And in fact, some of those caves got so big that they reached all the way up to the surface of the earth. And then the surface broke through, creating a sinkhole, just like that one that I came down through. And since the time of the Maya, well, the sinkholes have been the access to the cenotes below, to the source of fresh water. Look at those stalactites up there. They're all formed by the water seeping minerals out of the limestone. But look what's right next to it here. Those are tree roots that come all the way down from the jungle above in search of water. They come as far as 50 feet looking for this oasis. Now for the Mayans, these places were their freshwater wells. They call them cenote, and that was translated into Spanish as cenote. But they were totally sacred places. Today, people just come here to swim and to snorkel, just marvel at the wonder of the whole thing. But there's one thing that the locals will tell you is not in great abundance here, and that's fish. If you want that, well, you gotta go topside. So, once again, if you want to get the good stuff, well, you gotta go deep. What a way to make a living. I mean, these guys get a chance to go out every single day and fish. Mostly they fish for things that they can sell in the restaurants here at Playa del Carmen, but sometimes they take the tourists out too. This is so much fun. This is Jurel. It's gonna be great to make some ceviche out of. Well, maybe we need a little bit bigger one than that, so I think we better keep fishing. Well, this is the moment that I've been waiting for. I'm gonna make ceviche right here on the beach. Well, not me exactly. Juan's gonna make ceviche. ¿Y qué le vas a poner al ceviche? I asked him what he's gonna put into the ceviche.
Vamos a añadir ahora primero limón, luego el cilantro, luego sal, un poco de picante, y último el
tomate. ¿Y cebolla?
Cebolla.
Y cebolla también. Okay, so he's going to fillet up these fish that we caught, and then he's going to add lime juice to it and a little salt. Then he's going to chop up some cilantro, a little picante, as he called it. I think there's some chiles habaneros in that bowl there, and at the onion, and then at the very end, a little bit of tomato. Okay, ya empezamos. I just asked him what his favorite fish was for making ceviche, and he said one of his favorite is pargo. It looks a lot like a red snapper, and they have a lot of it around here. That's actually what he's using right now, but he also likes to use mahi-mahi for making ceviche, or sierra, which is Spanish mackerel, and it's got a stronger flavor when you cook it, but when you make ceviche out of it, it's absolutely delicious. It's got a high oil content and a lot of rich flavor, which makes it perfect for making ceviche. Juan told me that he comes from a fisherman's family. His father, his uncles, they're all fishermen, and they live sort of near Progreso, just north of Merida, the port town that's up there. But he moved over here a number of years ago, 10 years ago, when this was just a tiny little fishing village, and started fishing over here. And of course, it's grown up to be the Playa del Carmen, the resort town that we all know today. But he still fishes. This time he sort of fishes with tourists. So you can see that he's added just enough lime juice to, well, basically make that fish float. That's the way it'll sort of cook. But this is a very different kind of ceviche than what you'll find in a lot of places in Mexico, where they'll let it cook for hours in the lime juice. I say cook because it really does change the fish to give it a cooked texture, that lime juice does. But in this situation, he's got just enough on there to start that cooking process, just enough to kind of make it float. But he's only going to leave it for a few minutes. Okay, this is the thing, that usually when he takes tourists out, they catch their fish and take it to a restaurant oftentimes, and the restaurant charges them something to prepare the fish. But whatever's left over, this is what they do with it. This is the behind-the-scenes fisherman's supper. Wow, certainly the freshest ceviche I've ever tasted. So, the next time you find yourself in the Yucatan, take my advice. Find yourself a fisherman and go out deep sea fishing, but first, make sure you can prepare good ceviche. Muchísimas gracias, Juan. Es delicioso. Pruébalo. When a fishing expedition just isn't in the cards, well, a really good seafood market could be the next best thing. And even if you're not going to buy seafood to take home and cook, eating in a Mexican seafood market can offer amazing freshness. I mean, you're so close to the source. Now, in most parts of Mexico, when you're eating ceviche, you're eating it with little tostaditas, corn tortilla chips, or with saltine crackers. But here in Merida, they make a multitude of different cool fillings that they wrap into hot corn tortillas for wonderful little soft tacos. Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo están ustedes?
Bien,
Me gustaría uno de camarones a la vinagreta y uno al mojo de ajo, por favor.
Mucho gusto.
They've got some really tasty offerings. The first two are called a la vinagreta, in vinaigrette. It's shrimp and octopus with oil and vinegar, tomatoes, red onions, cilantro, green chili. They've got a little bit of battered shrimp there, and onto the toasted garlic with some pickled jalapenos. Then a dish that they call a la mexicana with green chili and tomato, octopus in its ink, and then a beautiful big bowl of sopa de mariscos, a wonderful seafood stew. Muchas gracias. We've got some condiments to choose from. I'm going to use a little of this salsa habanera. It's the cooked habanero salsa to go on the mojo de ajo shrimp. A little of the schneepeck. It's like a pico de gallo, also made with a little habanero. Classic here in the Yucatan. We could have some just chopped onions and cilantro or squeeze some lime on it. I'll tell you, I think this is just about as good as the beach. Almost all of those seafood taco stalls in the Merida market have a preparation that they call a la Vinagreta. It might be made with fresh shrimp or squid or maybe an ocean fish, but it's a dish that's really all about freshness. Fresh chopped tomatoes and radishes, red onion, some fresh chopped cilantro. But now that Vinagreta part might surprise you. It's not Vinagreta as in vinagre or vinegar, but it's instead a dressing that's made with fresh squeezed lime juice. I've got some chopping to do. Tender boiled shrimp in on top of all of those chopped vegetables. Pour in the fresh squeezed lime juice, dribble in olive oil, and then give a nice sprinkling of salt to the mixture. Now that looks fresh and lovely. It even looks more beautiful when you scoop it into a lettuce-lined bowl. You know, there's nothing more satisfying on a hot summer afternoon than a taco of cool shrimp a la Vinagreta. I like mine with a little habanero hot sauce sprinkled onto it. Now that takes me right to my inner beach vacation. Muchas gracias. Who wouldn't love a place like this? I mean, it's no shirt, no shoes, no problem. I mean, isn't that the reason that people come to the Riviera Maya? The sand, the beautiful views, ice cold beer, and of course the seafood. I've got this fabulous plate of salt and pepper ceviche. It's some fish cooked in lime with salt and pepper, a little onion, cilantro, and then they've added in some cooked shellfish. You can see some pieces of shrimp in there. And then, of course, I got king of the sea. I've got a whole plate of lobster a la Yucateca. Now, this one is done in a kind of foil hobo pack. First of all, it's marinated in some achiote, that spice that they use so much here in the Yucatan, with some sliced tomato and onion and peppers, and then all packed up and cooked on the grill underneath a cover until it's just succulent and fabulous. But you'll notice that there's one thing that's not on this plate here, and that's claws. Well, because this is spiny lobster, what we sometimes call rock lobster. It's the warm water lobster, and it doesn't have any claws. It's very different than our sweet Maine lobster, the clawed one. It's a little denser in flesh, a little nuttier in flavor, a little bit more like a langostino, or maybe a crayfish. But boy, is it delicious. Life is good. You know another thing I love about this restaurant? Well, besides the good food and the dress code, well, it's that. I mean, how many other restaurants do you know that encourage tableside napping? Okay, so if you're one of those people that thinks a hammock is perfectly charming but not very comfortable, well, let me stretch your thinking. Okay, you see a hammock and you get into it with your feet on one end and your head on the other, or vice versa, but you basically get into it the long way, right? Well, not so much. I mean, just look at that torturous curve that my back is in. I mean, it's certainly not something you find in human nature. But now, if I put my feet on one side like that, and then I stretch out diagonally, well, look what happens. You see, my back just sort of goes into a perfectly straight line. It feels like I'm on a wonderfully springy mattress. Now, the Yucatan is hammock central. I mean, it's the place where you'll find some of the best hammocks in the world made. And they don't just use them for hanging out in the backyard, no. They sleep in them. So you'll see hammock hooks in all of the homes. You'll even see it in some of the hotels, and certainly you find it in all of the most popular restaurants. A tale of two lobsters, the Maine lobster and the spiny lobster. Now, the Maine lobster, the one with the claws, of course, is the one that we think of as, well, perhaps a little sweeter, more tender, certainly that quintessential lobster flavor. But for those of us that eat frozen lobster tails, which I would guess is the majority of us, they're usually from spiny lobsters. So let me show you a great way to prepare them. It's called langosta al mojo de ajo, which means lobster with a bath of garlic. And in Mexico, well, there's a very time-consuming way to prepare it. But I figured out a much more streamlined version. And it starts with about 1/3 cup of olive oil and 8 cloves of garlic that are cut in half. We're going to let those cook for a couple of minutes until they soften up, begin to brown, and they release their aroma. All that goes into the food processor along with about 2/3 cup of chicken broth and 1/2 teaspoon salt and 1/2 teaspoon of cracked black pepper. We're going to puree that until everything comes together. Now, about 1/3 of that mixture will stay in the food processor. 2/3 of it will go back into our skillet here that we'll use for a sauce. The other will be a baste. And to the sauce part, we're going to add a chipotle chili. You know, these are the smoke-dried jalapenos that you can buy reconstituted in a vinegary tomato broth. And I'm going to just cut it in half, scrape out the seeds, and then cut this chili into thin little strips. Now that's going to go over here into the sauce part. Clean up my board a little bit here with a towel. And then we're going to go on to the lobsters. Now these are the defrosted, frozen, spiny lobster tails. And we're going to cut them in half using a pair of kitchen shears. Just go right down between the flesh and the shell. Then flip them over and do the same on the other side. That should have them separated now. And we're going to cut the two halves apart. Go on and do all the rest of them, and we're ready to grill. Now that I've cut them all in half, I'm going to use that 1/3 of our garlic mixture to baste over the top of the flesh of the lobster. And we'll lay them on a kind of medium hot grill, flesh side down. Now these lobsters took about 3 minutes per side to cook. You'll know when they're ready because you can slide a little paring knife down between the shell and the flesh, and it'll come free very easily. Look at that beautiful aromatic garlic chipotle mojo de ajo. Limes will be beautiful to squeeze onto this grilled lobster, and a little bit of cilantro to sprinkle over it all. Well, I tell you what, in Mexico, when it comes to fish and seafood, whether it's lobster on the grill or ceviche on the beach, it seems like the real secret is always the same. Less is more. The simpler the approach, well, it seems like the closer you come to experiencing the mysteries of the deep. You know, sort of like life itself. Fabulous grilled lobster.
No, I don't.
Here's the grilled lobster.
Yeah!
Lots of garlic.